Have you ever noticed what happens the moment you stop chasing approval? You stop performing for the room, you stop reacting to drama, and you start quietly focusing on your own growth. Suddenly, a subtle friction appears. A friend gets distant, a coworker gets sarcastic, a family member makes passive-aggressive jokes about how you've changed. This shift often feels unprovoked. You didn't demand they change, you simply became quieter and calmer, and somehow that was the problem. This reaction can feel deeply isolating, but it follows a predictable psychological pattern. The hostility isn't a random clash of personalities. It's a documented mechanism that activates when personal growth disrupts a social environment. At its core is the mirror effect. A resilient mind reflects the internal state of everyone around it. When you stand firm, it exposes what they haven't dealt with. Discipline highlights laziness. Calm exposes chaos, and progress strips away excuses. Confronting those exposed flaws causes intense internal pain. To resolve that discomfort, the brain finds it psychologically easier to attack the mirror than to improve the reflection. To understand why a friend's success can feel like a personal crisis, we have to look at how human beings are wired. According to social comparison theory, our brains automatically evaluate our standing against the people physically and socially closest to us to assess our own rank and survival. Usually, this assessment runs quietly in the background, but when a peer levels up, it forces an inescapable upward comparison. The person standing still is forced to measure their own position against your visible growth. This creates cognitive dissonance. It is the mental friction that occurs when someone's belief that success is impossible clashes with the evidence of a peer succeeding under the exact same conditions. Hostility functions as a biological defense mechanism. The brain generates anger to protect a fragile ego from the painful realization that its own inaction, not the system, is the limiting factor. This dynamic scales up to groups, creating behaviors like the crab mentality, where they actively punish visible growth to maintain a uniform level of mediocrity. Weak minds find psychological safety in mutual validation. Within these groups, shared misery acts as a comfort zone, where everyone agrees that their situation is unchangeable. When an independent thinker breaks free, they destroy that collective illusion. Your escape proves that progress was always possible, which removes the group's primary excuse for staying trapped. Groups often try to make the cost of your strength uncomfortably high. They use mockery and exclusion as tools to force you back into the collective comfort zone. Admitting to feeling inferior is painful, so insecure individuals often rely on a defense called projection. They take the qualities they dislike within themselves and accuse you of harboring them. This leads to the moral reframing of strength as a defect. If you set firm boundaries, you are called selfish. If you display discipline, you are labeled obsessive. Your growth is repackaged as a character flaw. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche identified this as resentment. He observed how those who lack the courage to dictate their own lives reframe their passivity as virtue, while labeling another person's ambition as vice. These character attacks reveal the attacker's own limitations. They are confessions of what the attacker has abandoned, disguised as righteous judgment of your choices. Emotional independence poses a specific problem for those who rely on social conformity. When a mind stops reacting to guilt trips or group pressure, those who rely on emotional leverage lose their primary tool for influence. While weak minds often rely on immediate emotional displays and public drama to navigate conflict, strong minds prioritize emotional restraint. They focus on long-term consequences rather than winning a temporary argument. Niccolò Machiavelli observed this dynamic in historical power structures. He noted that capable individuals attract hidden hatred because their competence exposes the waste and incompetence of those around them. Manipulative groups resist independent thinkers because emotional detachment neutralizes the crowd's ability to exert control. When you stop needing their validation, you stop being subject to their rules. Future criticism requires a shift in perspective. Instead of taking an insult at face value, decode the motive. Ask what unresolved pain inside the attacker is being triggered by your progress. Real strength requires the discipline of discernment. Ignoring all feedback indiscriminately often masks a deep fear of failure rather than true confidence. You must learn to distinguish between malicious envy and the necessary correction that leads to further growth. The final goal is to cultivate a state of unbothered focus. When your energy is directed entirely toward your own cultivation, the noise of the crowd loses its ability to influence your direction. You are not required to shrink your potential to make an insecure room feel comfortable. True strength is visible in your trajectory, how consistently you continue to grow despite the resistance of those standing still.